All right, hello everybody. Welcome again to Friends Occasionally Not Disagree, the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. This is Cody. I'm here with Joe and Dave this week, and we are going to be doing something we haven't done before on the podcast. We're going to talk about music, which we have done, but this is a special episode today called an album exchange. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but in a quick version of it, everybody here got to pick an album for the other hosts to listen to and review for tonight's podcast to share some music. So we'll get back to that here in a moment. Let's check out what the guys have been up to here. Let's start with Dave. What have you been up to?
Not much. Enjoying a nice long weekend. Had some board gaming with some friends. Went to Disney on Ice this morning, which sounds lame, I will admit, but we've done it 2 years now, and I enjoy it every time. Like the Disney music. I love a lot of Disney music, and the ice skating talent is honestly super impressive. They're doing like aerial flips and shit. Today they had dudes like ice skating up ramps and like off of them and then landing on another ramp. I was like, I didn't know you could do that on ice skates. And it's a good time. It was really fun. So
Wait, because I've never seen this, so are they like just dancing, doing routines to the Disney music, or are they actually like reenacting small scenes from the thing it's from?
they're reenacting. So last year it was like the first half was they're basically reenacting Frozen with all the songs, and obviously in like an abridged version of it. And then the second half was Encanto, and then this one was more of like a medley where they do like one or two songs per movie from like 12 different movies.
Okay.
Yeah, it was fun.
Who won those board games you're talking
about? You won the first game. You won the second game, and then you and I tied for dead last in the third game.
Well, that game barely counts as a game, but
who won the third game?
Karen did.
Ooh,
yeah, actually, the quick word game of all things.
My eternal board game nemesis.
Yeah, right.
It all goes back to that first game, the first and only game of diplomacy I ever played with you guys.
How about you, Joe? What have you been up to?
I went to a live thing on Friday. My wife and I went to see SNL alum Tim Meadows do some live comedy, and it was hilarious.
Awesome.
We were a little nervous going in because we both really liked Tim Meadows as a person and as a performer, but we didn't know if he really had much of like a stand-up background.
Yeah.
So we just didn't know what to expect. But I mean, it was like start to finish, we were just laughing our asses off. So he was great. Highly recommend if he's coming to a town near any of our listeners. The other thing I wanted to mention, which may somewhat relate to one of the things we're discussing later today, is I finally got to see Martin Scorsese's latest film, Killers of the Flower Moon.
I thought you watched that a long time ago, no?
No.
Okay.
Well, it was only in theaters until this week. And now it's available on Apple TV Plus. And I really wanted to see it in the theater, but it is literally 3.5 hours long with no intermission. And I just didn't want to have to try to deal with that in the theater. I'm a big fan of Martin Scorsese. I think he is probably our greatest living filmmaker. I know that's a hot take. It's not a hot take.
Not that out of a take.
I really like this movie.
Take,
I thought this was a great movie, but it could have been about 45 minutes or so shorter. But it did have an interesting not quite cameo, slightly bigger than a cameo role, I guess supporting role by a fairly inexperienced actor named Jason Isbell, who had way more screen time and more lines than I was expecting and was actually pretty good in it. But I mean, I would recommend anyone check that movie out. It's definitely telling an important story, but it is a little bit longer than it should be.
I assume you knew he was in the movie before.
I did.
Yeah. Okay, sweet. I have been up to just some updated versions of things I like to do. I've started getting back into Fire Emblem Engage again a little bit. I checked walkthrough, which I don't normally do for a game because I felt like the plot was winding down. I was like, this must be about the end of the game. And I finished mission 14 and apparently out of 23. So no, apparently that's not near the end of the game at all. The battles just take like 2 hours. They're so long. It's quite challenging too. TV-wise, my family has been doing a few things too. We did pause our DC movie watch along. We watched 3 to get to Suicide Squad for Cameron for Harley Quinn, and then we paused and we watched Echo first on Disney Plus, the Marvel show, which it sounds like we will do a review on soon here. And then we started the Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus to try that one as well. And I think we're 2 or 3 episodes into that also, and it's good. It's a really good set show, I think, for the ages of the people in our family. Like the parents are enjoying it, but the kids are like, it's relatable to them. It's applicable to them as well.
Yeah, my kids are enjoying that one a lot too.
Yeah, how far are you guys?
We're caught up. We've been watching it as a family as it comes out.
Is it coming up still week by week?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Every
Okay.
Tuesday night they release a new one.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. I didn't even know that. So do that, and then probably get back into the DC movies just after that, I would guess. But I think that's about it, really. Reading, if we do a little reading here and there, but that's about it. Nothing huge. Okay, so main topic tonight, ladies and gents, is an album exchange, as mentioned here on the onset tonight. So rules for this one, pretty simple. Everybody that wanted to participate tonight for the first one of these got to choose an album. With the only criteria being basically it was an album they wanted the other host to listen to and experience. Probably is going to be an album that has some relevancy or meaning to them, I would guess, on a more personal level, perhaps, but maybe not, as we go through these. And we kind of have a setup here. So we're going to do the host introducing their album that they chose first without more or less personal comments, just more or less informative comments on the outset. And we're going to let the other 2 hosts talk about the album as far as what they thought of it, if there were any songs that really stuck with them, highs or lows or in between. Put some numbers on these as a rating from everybody, including the person who selected the album. And then we'll give, at the end here, the person who chose the album a chance to kind of retort and maybe talk a little bit behind the scenes about why they chose that album and maybe some highs or lows off of that album to them. So I think that's where we're at. Did I cover everything? Does that sound...
Yeah, sounds good.
Pretty good.
Sounds good.
I'll say also on the onset here, I know music, at least in our experience here with the podcast, has always been a very personal enjoyment for people. And I know a lot of our good host friends here as well have a lot of deep connections to music that is like tissue in their lives and almost like, time periods, if you want to think of it as like biographical, high fidelity style, right? So like different songs and different albums are going to mean different things to people as well. So we'll see what comes out of this. This will be interesting as we talk about all these things, because I don't know that we've really handled personal music on this yet. We've done like reviews and top 10s and stuff, but I don't think we've ever
Cody cry.
really got there.
I want to jump in here and say that I totally agree that sharing the music that is kind of a part of you is a vulnerable thing to do, and I have been dreading this episode and kind of regretting that I signed up for it for that reason. I feel strongly about my music, and I very much am of the mind that people in many different areas have different opinions, and that's a wonderful thing, and that there's someone out there for everyone, something out there for everyone. But for some reason with music, I have a problem where I can't understand why everyone does not have the exact same musical taste that I do. Because music is so hit or miss for me, as it probably is for everyone. I don't know why I have this. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. Just that this might be the episode that ends some friendships. We'll see.
Oh no. I think music is dumb and you guys are lame.
Whoa.
With your weird, stupid emotions.
Yeah, I bet. No, well, that's a good comment, I think, Dave, to put in there. Yeah, it is. I know it's just different. And it's, I've always, my whole life at least, I've always kind of struggled to be like, if somebody showed you like their top 10 favorite movies of all time, like I don't think in any way that shows you who they are as much as like their top 10 favorite albums or artists or things of that nature.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Music just connects deeper inside with you. And like you just said, some of it hits some people different than others, that's for sure. And you look at some people and you're like, how can you listen to that type of music? And other people, I know, say the same thing about a lot of my music. So
You're not wrong.
I'm not going to be surprised by that. So, okay, well, after a very convoluted and expanded process of deciding what order to do these albums in tonight, we threw it all out the window and Dave just told us what to do. So this is what we're going to do. We are starting with, I guess, the quote-unquote most known band, which is Linkin Park, and I'll save the other ones after that. This is the band I chose for tonight. You guys can introduce yours as you get there. I don't have a ton I'm going to say before the album here, and then I'll let you guys kind of get in, but I'll just do a couple base facts here on the band Linkin Park. They're from California originally, started in 1996 in their earliest incarnation. At various times have been described as heavy metal, new metal, hip hop, alternative rock, electronica, and pop. Their band members, just quickly here, the vocalist, rhythm guitarist, keyboardist is Mike Shinoda, also aka known as the rapper in the group. Lead guitarist Brad Delson, bassist Dave Farrell, the DJ is Joe Hahn, drummer Rob Bordone, and the late vocalist Chester Bennington until he died in 2017. Studio albums, they have officially 7. Hybrid Theory in 2000, Meteora in 2003, Minutes to Midnight 2007, 2010, Thousand Suns, 2012, Living Things, 2014, The Hunting Party, and 2017, One More Light, which is the album that I chose for tonight's podcast, their last official album. They also do have numerous live albums, remixes. They have a really bizarro collaboration album called Collision Course with Jay-Z from back in the day, if you remember that. And then the last couple notes I have here for the intro on this is just as a band, I was a little surprised, actually have the 51st best-selling album in American history, which for those of you keeping score at home, yes, does outsell any album by Taylor Swift that she's ever done. So take that for your first feather in the cap tonight. And then last thing I put on here is just that the band has always been really known for kind of having 2 different vocal styles in their songs. Like I said, with Mike Shinoda rapping, eventually sharing some lead vocal duties as this band went on. And then Chester Bennington as the lead singer / screamer, I guess some people might refer to him as well in this. So that is my intro for Linkin Park, One More Light. So who wants to kick off some comments on this one?
Do it, Joe.
We're like stinking Park, am I right?
Ooh, hey. Here we go.
First shot fired.
I'm just kidding. I have some more serious thoughts to get into. Just hang in there. I'm so sorry.
Do it, dude.
So I have to say that I had never really sat down and listened to any Linkin Park before. I have to correct myself saying that I actually saw Linkin Park live one time, but don't remember any of that experience because they were part of Metallica's Summer Sanitarium tour 20 plus years ago. And I was there to see Metallica and just didn't really pay any attention during their set, if I'm being honest. So I kind of had a vague idea of what their music was like. And this album was not that at all. I was kind of shocked when I started listening to this album. I have notes for all the songs. I'm not going to go track by track, but among my notes for the first song is kind of reminds me of Owl City.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote AJR in a very similar way.
And the first track on this album, which I mean is true of a lot of the album. It's like a kind of light poppy, like a 2010s kind of somewhat hip hoppy infused pop song. The just entire musical tone of the song caught me off guard because it feels so light and kind of upbeat. And my conception of Linkin Park is heavy distorted guitars and screaming and rapping. So
yeah, Very similar over here. I had heard Linkin Park, but mostly Hybrid Theory, and then later their Reanimation album, which was kind of like a remix album. I love a lot of Hybrid Theory and listened to that a lot back in the day, and I had never heard this album before, so I was also surprised when track one started playing, and I wrote down, why are these dark as shit lyrics being sung over AJR style poppy music?
That might be a conversation that can extend to other albums.
Yeah, for sure. I don't nobody can save me. The first track we're talking about, like, it definitely, though it's one of the many songs on the album that like takes on a whole new tone in light of Chester Bennington, death after this album. So that was like kind of the filter that I was listening to the whole thing through, which it was not the filter through which it was made, really. So that's I don't know if that's would be considered the right way to listen to it or not. But I think that's definitely part of it. But yeah, the whole thing, I liked a lot of it, but I just felt like the content matter, the lyrical poetry of it, and just the tone was completely offset by like the pop music behind it, including like the 2010s fucking Alvin and the Chipmunks backup vocals that are on a couple songs on Good Goodbye and Sorry for Now. It's like, don't you come back no more, or like,
actually,
that stuff drives me crazy.
Yeah, sorry. Largely because of that, like, sorry, I gave each track a numerical rating. I'm not going to say what they all are, but Sorry for Now was my lowest rating. And my notes say, not sure what the hell is going on musically, but I kind of hate it.
I actually pre-predicted that was my notes as Joe's least favorite song on this album.
That was my least favorite song as well.
It's just so bad. I mean, I'd be kind of like going back to just my general thoughts. One of my other lesser favorite songs was the second track, Good Goodbye, because that one is more kind of rap focused, and I'm just not super into rap in general. I did like a lot of this album, which honestly kind of surprised me. But I have to say my favorite two songs on the album were the last two, and I think that's largely because they involve like actual noticeable guitars, and like they sound like, songs that somebody sat in a room and played with musical instruments, which a lot of the rest of this album does not. There's definitely a lot of just like electronic programming going on in this album. But yeah, I really like the last two tracks. They both feel pretty like stripped down. The last track, Sharp Edges, I noted almost feels like kind of like a roots or almost like gospel-y song. But I really like the guitar on that. I liked a lot of the lyrics throughout the album, although if I'm being honest, I kind of felt like a lot of the lyrics were a bit generic. A lot of just kind of like generalizations and nothing that felt like really super detailed and like really painted any scenes for me. But I don't know. I mean, I guess, should I give my kind of rating and just overall feeling on the album, or?
Yeah, if you want to. I got some more to say, but go for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll hand it over to you, but I'll say this about the. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead.
So I'll say this. This album really did defy my expectations of what a Linkin Park album would sound like. It's kind of the polar opposite of what I was expecting, which, like I said, is a lot of distorted, heavy guitars and kind of louder, more screaming vocals intermixed with rapping. I think if I had to describe this album in one word, though, it would be inoffensive. To me, it just largely feels like a kind of formulaic pop album of its era. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's I wouldn't really be too upset if, any of these songs came on in the background while I was like driving around or like doing chores around my house or anything. But it also just doesn't feel like it has much to make it stand out compared to other pop albums of its time. Um, so because of that factor, I gave it, averaging out my scores for each track, it comes out to an average of 6.05,
Okay.
which honestly is higher than I would have expected to rate a Linkin Park album going into it. But like I said, a lot of it is, pleasant and enjoyable. It's just I didn't feel like it was really, nothing was outstanding to me.
Okay. Yeah, I've got some more notes here. You mentioned the last two tracks, and the one of those is One More Light, which I really liked. It seems to be the most popular song on the album, and for good reason. I thought it was a really beautiful song. I wrote best song of both albums that weren't mine. But it's still
Ouch.
no My December, which is my favorite Linkin Park song of all time.
Wow. Okay.
Some other ones I enjoyed. I liked Battle Symphony. That was good, like an anthem, like motivating shit song. Heavy was really good. I liked how it talked about like depression and the burdens that we carry. Halfway Right was another anthem that I thought I would listen to outside of this podcast. So there's a number of I'm with Joe in that there's none of these that I would like skip past if it came up on a mix, and some of them that I genuinely enjoyed. But overall, the style of music is not what I expected from Linkin Park, and I think it's not what I like from Linkin Park. Like Talking to Myself is, I wrote there's good lyrics about like trying to get through to someone and failing, which is like a really interesting thing to kind of explore. But the music, it's like some Maroon 5 bullshit. Like, and that song's about Jane, because that album is legitimately excellent. Well, I'm talking about later
Not the
Maroon
rest
5.
of Maroon 5.
Not every single other Maroon 5 effort ever. Yeah. So if we're gonna go numerically, then I'm gonna give this a 5, which is, in my system is like it's an exact middle point. I don't boost things, so it's like I put it right in the middle, I guess. There's stuff I like here and would listen to again for sure. And so I appreciate having been introduced to it for that reason.
All right.
What do you got?
Well, so I mean, I have a lot to say, but just on a few different topics, I guess. So I'll just kind of jump into these. But I would say first off, Dave, the songs that you kind of noted as the ones you like more are probably the ones I also enjoy more off this album.
Cool.
Like I think I have, just looking at my ratings here, but I think I have Battle Symphony, Heavy, One More Light, and maybe Halfway Right are like the only ones that are actually on my Spotify playlist. I like the
Nice.
album, but those are the only ones that are in my
I agree
rotation.
with all those except Battle Symphony.
Didn't like that one.
It was just
Okay.
it's super generic. I mean, like Dave said, it is kind
Yep.
of like a review up song, but it literally just feels like they were trying to make like a, yeah, you can, I'm gonna do this thing, motivational song,
I
but
agree
there's
with
no
that.
depth to it whatsoever.
I uh, I agree that it does seem like an obvious effort, but I'll tell you, I'm looking at this list of songs. I listened to the album like 2.5 times, and this is the only one that I can tell you right now how it goes. Like I could sing this one for you right now without listening to it. So it's catchy. It's good shit.
Okay, well, let's see. I'll just jump into some comments I had made on this one and get vulnerable if I can here for this part.
Do it.
Linkin Park was a band that came to me like that first album, Hybrid Theory, kind of like Dave mentioned. That was really a time period in my life that was the music I was into, was kind of that new metal shit, which was like that heavy rock with some of the rap elements added into it. And there were a lot of bands that came out about the same time that had similar sounds. I think Linkin Park probably career-wise outlasted a lot of those when they were gone, but also maybe partially because they did change their style as they went on. And I didn't know if you guys had heard anything like this before. Um, in confession here, I have to say the first three albums I might even have the fourth album, A Thousand Suns, but I also had kind of fallen off on these guys until years later, and then I came back and there's a couple albums in there that I've only listened to a few times still. I should go back and listen to again. But this last album, One More Light, when this came back out, and I kind of picked up on this one again. This was kind of catching my ear a little bit, and I kind of fell back in love with Linkin Park with this one. But I agree with everything you guys are saying that like if it'd be just as weird if somebody listened to this album as their first experience to Linkin Park, and then you took them back and made them listen to the first couple albums. It would probably seem just as strange to them how much this band has transformed from one end to the other end. Hell, I even the second album, Meteora, I even actually storyboarded a Metroid 2 Prime music video for the whole album at one point because I thought the songs matched up so well with the actual plot of that video game. But that's neither here nor there. But anyway, let's see.
Are you okay, Cody?
Yeah, I'm
Release the Cody cut. I want to see it.
Yes. Back to the band here, though, as their sound really sonically changed, they did get a lot of grief, I think, from their own fans because they didn't have that style that they were used to at the beginning. So they were still mega popular, but also started to kind of get that pushback from their own fans just because it was different. And I've seen speculation that they were, basically trying to reinvent themselves like all bands do through times that change. I mean, you don't turn on the radio now and find new metal on any place, that's for sure, unless it's a random song that somebody's playing as a DJ someplace. But I've heard them like compared to like the Chainsmokers and like later bands that came that kind of had some like singy anthems with some messages behind it, but more friendly radio pop rock type stuff. I could see that, I guess, here with this one. These later albums do have a lot more on like the ballady side, and predominantly for me with this one is just the focus on mental health awareness that the album has. And I know this is something like that their fans they liked about the band also because they were very open about public struggle. Chester, I'll talk about here in a second more, but he gave numerous public interviews where he discussed his depression and he discussed all the problems he was going through and that he was fighting to be okay basically as a person, and he was letting people know that he was fighting also in some ways. So there's a lot of parts in this one I think that are really just mental health related, which I think in some ways really attracts me to this album a whole lot more than just a typical Linkin Park album or a typical album by somebody else. So this band, this album was coming out. I think they had released a song or two or maybe a third sample off this when the news came out about Chester, who had committed suicide at his home. And I finally broke my streak here by changing my background tonight for the first time in I don't know how many months. But this is on YouTube. His wife put this up later because this is him playing the Harry Potter jelly bean game with his kids.
Okay.
Where they have to pick the flavor. You don't know if it's the good one or the bad one. And he's just like giggling and laughing and running and spitting to the garbage and stuff. And that was about 36 hours before he killed himself at his house. So it's tough just to think about like, a couple thoughts here. One is I know the rock business is so hard on people, and it's you guys know that the profession has chewed up and spit out so many icons and legends through the years, and suicide rates have always been not great, and people that have worked themselves to death or depressed themselves to death or drank themselves to death or whatever. And we've talked about like Chris Cornell on here before. But even like, one I think early like public one that really stuck with me was Robin Williams when he had died. Was just a guy who like, I don't know, if you didn't know him deeply, you would just assume he's like a funny guy who's living the best life. But, he had so many demons behind the scenes and people suffer, and we don't always see that. And I think that's kind of the case here, even though he was, like I said, more vocal about what he was going through. Just that idea of like, you'll never be in somebody else's shoes. And that's the hardest part about, I think, anything with suicide and mental health. So he actually did have bad addiction, which he actually did overcome later in his life, but he would always tell people that was just step one, and he was still trying to kind of get through the depression aspect of that as well. So thinking about some of the music on this, I mean, if you just look, this is an album made of 10 songs. I did triple check on this because Chester wasn't really known as the lyricist of the band. He only had a hand in writing 2 of the 10 songs on this album. Although, like I said, I think there's a real heavy emphasis on mental health here. But even if you just look at the 10 titles, you have Nobody Can Save Me, Good Goodbye, Talking to Myself, Battle Symphony, Invisible, Heavy, Sorry for Now, Halfway Right, One More Light, and Sharp Edges, which I don't think is too much of a stretch to kind of tie those all in some ways to mental health. And the band was always really positive about it too. Like they would say that their songs included a lot of that. They always presented it as you can overcome this. We're kind of here for you type mentality, which, I think in some ways makes it even more tragic that he's singing these songs on stage every night to try to help his fans, but behind the scenes apparently was suffering so much that that's the choice he ended up making. A couple other song notes on this one just is that One More Light song that I think you both mentioned, but that is probably one of my favorite songs I've discovered in the last, I don't know how many years. I just think it's a beautiful song that's really applicable to anybody who's lost somebody or somebody who's going through something and having the family have to pick up the pieces afterwards about that. I put a note in here too. I don't play this album in the car often, but that song has come on probably on my liked list a few times. And it's actually a recent memory, but it's actually one of my favorite singing memories of my life because I don't really sing, out loud to people too often. But there has been a few times where I've been driving in the dark with my kids in the car and they have heard the song, enough times on the radio or on my Spotify playlist that my daughter and I have kind of sang it as like a duet a few times in the dark. And it's not a topic that we have really talked about, mental health, but it's one that I know she understands. And it's just like, I don't know, singing that with her in the dark has just been really a moment that's really stood out to me in my life as one of my favorite things I think I have sang with somebody before. So that's kind of a cool memory for that one. And then a couple other notes on this one is I never talk about this actually, but I said I would tonight, I think. So who knows or not who knows, but the only instance I have in my life of mental health and suicide is my uncle that took his life. And I don't talk about that very often too, but he was my mom's brother essentially, and he's the guy who introduced me to baseball and football, basketball, amusement parks, a lot of comedy. We'd always drive around and joke about stuff every place we'd go. And he has a daughter, but he never had a son, so I think I was always like his son to him. But it was hard. It was hard on the family. My mom obviously was her brother, and then his kids. He had 2 daughters also, and then my grandparents, who actually also lost another one of the sons when he was young, so they had to bury 2 of their kids. Poor people. But it's just kind of reminds me of him, I think, a little bit in some ways.
Sorry you went through that, Cody. That's rough, man.
Yeah, it's tough. There's a line in the One More Light song where he just mentions like having the extra chair in the kitchen that you don't need anymore.
Yeah.
And we have a real small family, so that always really stuck out to me. You notice when somebody's gone,
Yeah.
And he did have he had a chronic illness. He was not, he was healthy, but he wasn't healthy. He'd have spells. that would kind of be better or worse. And people knew the bad spots were bad, but again, like you just don't know, apparently the bad spots were real bad to him. So just makes me think about this, that's all.
Yeah.
And no, it's just mental health is just it's something that I think was not really on my radar, honestly, before that. And then like I think of last summer we went to go see Disturbed, and I think I might have mentioned this on Facebook or maybe in the chat or something, but we saw Disturbed, and the lead singer of Disturbed's name's David, and he talked to the audience a lot, maybe even too much, but a lot about mental health during the concert, and he talked about like that he had almost killed himself this past March, and partially it was because he just missed his friends in music, and he mentioned Chester, and he mentioned Chris Cornell and some other people from some other bands. And it's just a tough subject. And I mean, I don't talk about this one really either. And thank God it hasn't been anybody that I've been super, super close to. But you guys know I've been teaching for about 20 years now too, and the amount of students I've seen that have taken their own lives.
Awful.
Wow.
It's tough, man. It's tough. There's also stuff out there. Lots of stuff out there. All right. Well, let me wrap this up here because I'm going to blabber. So, real quick, my closing things here, song-wise, I was actually kind of surprised the score I gave this one, which is not as high as I would have thought. As I went through, I just did the same thing for all three of our albums, which was ranked every song and then averaged it by the number of songs. Standout ones for me here, the big two are going to be Heavy. That song with the female singer Kiara. It's the only song they have in their entire discography with a female that sings with them. And I think that one's really cool. It's just talking about.
I did note that I liked her vocals on that song. I thought that was pretty
agreed.
cool.
Yeah. That was good. I gave that one a 9, and then One More Light, I gave it 10 too. But overall, my score here was 7.75 for the album. It's pretty much every song on there. I have like 7 or 8, with the exception of, like I said, those couple songs on there. And then I guess I'll just wrap up, and maybe we choose weird topics on this podcast, but this will be the third time I'll have mentioned this now in 103 episodes. But your number to call, people, is 866-903-3787. That is our national mental health hotline, 866-903-3787. Or you can call 988, which is the suicide crisis hotline as well, 988. So people out there love you. I promise, no matter who you are. I know it's tough. It can be tough. Everybody has their own struggles, but there's somebody out there who loves you, I promise. And reach out for help if you need it. So there we go.
Cody, I'm glad I gave you a hug less than 24 hours ago, because I would really like to give you one right now, buddy.
It's all good. We're good. It's good.
Way to make Cody go first, Dave.
Yeah, why the fuck did we have Cody go first? That was a terrible idea.
Oh man.
We can't rip into Joe's album now. Come on.
Well, let's just call it, like you said, you can't rip into my album now. So it's just good episode, guys. We really went some places.
Oh man, we love you, Cody.
We do love you, Cody.
All right. Joe, you want to introduce your album? Tell us a little bit about it.
Am I talking about my personal feelings about the artist up front, or saving that for the back end too?
I think the way Cody said it and the way he did it was more of like an informational introduction to the band and the album.
Sure.
It's whatever you want it to be, you know?
All right, let's go with it. So Jason Isbell, it is spelled Isbell, but he pronounces it Isbell. I don't think he gets upset if people say Isbell, though. Is a 4-time Grammy-winning singer, songwriter, and guitarist from Bumblefuck, Alabama.
That a real place?
No, it's Green Hill, Alabama, but he he lived in a trailer for a number of years in his childhood. I believe his mom was 17 when she had him, and his dad was 19. So, like, he comes from very kind of, poor, humble roots. I think he himself would admit that, at least in his early days, he probably was living a number of Southern stereotypes. But he started off his music career, kind of his noteworthy career at least, as a lead guitarist for a band called the Drive-By Truckers, which are a Southern rock band that's still going to this day. And after he got fired by that band because he was a drunk disaster, he got sober. So, I mean, honestly, Cody, I appreciate you talking so much about mental health, but that's an important topic for me too. And addiction and substance abuse is also a very personal thing for me. And one of the things I admire about Jason Isbell is that he is very publicly sober for over 10 years now. And he, writes a lot and talks a lot about his battles with addiction and some of the not so great things that he did while he was under the influence. But he kind of launched his solo career in 2013 with an album called Southeastern, which was an album that he wrote not long after he finally got sober after dealing with some substance issues for a number of years. And that kind of made everyone pay attention to him. And he's now on his 9th solo album, which is the one we're going to be talking about tonight, called Weathervanes. Just kind of a general thing, I guess. I think what I admire most about Jason Isbell is that he's not afraid to write about hot button issues, like very divisive, controversial issues. We'll talk about this album a little bit. I'll let you guys talk about it and I'll talk about it. But just on this album, there are songs about abortion and addiction and school shootings.
Yeah.
Like he does not shy away from, talking about the heavy stuff. And it's even more striking given his background coming from, the South, which is historically, most people would see it as fairly conservative. His grandfather was actually a Pentecostal preacher. So he definitely grew up around a lot of conservative viewpoints. But I have to admire the fact that he has kind of eschewed, Southern stereotypes around those sorts of things and really kind of made a name for himself as a songwriter who, is not afraid to express his views. And I also think he just writes some incredible lyrics, and he is also a hell of a guitar player. So he's kind of the whole musical package for me. This album, Weathervanes, I mentioned is his 9th. He actually wrote these songs while he was in Oklahoma shooting Killers of the Flower Moon with Martin Scorsese.
Oh, okay.
So one of the songs, King of Oklahoma, actually has some weird kind of direct references to that movie where not plot points, but some character names from the movie appear in that song and just the setting of Oklahoma. But it's not spoilery to say in the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, Robert De Niro's character is known by his family and friends as King. Like, it's like this nickname because he is like this rich, powerful person. They call him King. So King of Oklahoma.
Hmm.
And then
does Jason Isbell's character steal copper pipes or attempt to steal copper pipes?
No, the
someone else gets to them first.
The story in the song is not tied to that movie, but that is the Oklahoma thing. And then the female lead in the movie's character's name is Molly, which is the wife in the song King of Oklahoma's name. So kind of inspired by some things that were going on, but not really the narrative.
Does this character take a piss off a 20-foot ladder?
I don't believe there is a point in the movie where he is emptying his bladder on a 20-foot ladder.
Okay.
And ends up wishing he had found himself some shade. But That's another thing I like about Jason Isbell, though, is that amongst all this, the dark themes he writes about, he often incorporates some humor into his songs, and a lot of times it's kind of on the dry side where, if you don't really realize that he's kind of joking, you won't catch it. Anyway, I think the reason I picked this album, I was torn between this album and Southeastern, which is the one that kind of, first where he first made his mark. Um, I feel like this album has a more kind of modern and maybe more appealing to a general audience sound overall. Southeastern, a lot of the songs are like a lot more stripped down, and I think there's maybe a little more, not that there's not some country shit going on this album, but Southeastern is maybe even a little bit more in that direction. Whereas this album, there's a lot of rock, a lot of more folky sounding stuff. So I thought maybe to expose you guys to your first Jason Isbell album, I thought maybe this would go over a little bit better in general. But yeah, that's all I guess I'll say for now. I will let you guys make me really mad, so let's get into it.
We're not gonna make you mad. Maybe we'll make you mad. Well, first I'll just put some comments out there in that I assumed this was like purely country-ish going into this. I didn't know exactly what I was in the mood for, and you can say that I'm wrong on this, but I labeled the album blues, funk, country, and folk. Those were the four that I came up with as
I
far
will
as
say that
genres.
he is technically known as an Americana artist.
Oh, that sounds made up.
Yep.
It's kind of made up.
But what isn't?
But
So.
I think it's a way of saying not really country, or at least not modern country.
Okay. I would say for both of your albums tonight, I really have a problem of like when I hear a song, I tried to think of what artist the song reminds me of, just
Okay.
kind of a natural association type thing. So, Joe, for yours here, and we can go through a couple songs in a bit, but I wrote down at various times that it sounded like Neil Young, Tom Petty, Mumford and Sons, AC/DC,
Interesting.
Neil Young, and Pink Floyd.
Neil Young twice. It
Yes.
sounded like extra Neil Young.
You did sound extra Neil Youngy to me.
I feel like Jason would be flattered that you said that because Neil Young is one of his biggest influences.
Okay.
As are Tom Petty and Pink Floyd, actually. So everyone except Mumford, you're kind of spot on.
Well, he didn't do great on the Mumford songs. So that's okay. he did good on the rest. Let's see. Yeah, just overall kind of thoughts I put at the top of this one were, a lot of these songs, like you already kind of mentioned at the onset here, but seemed like they had some statements that he wanted to make in the songs to varying degrees. Maybe he was successful with me on those, and some he may not have been as successful with them. I wish he would push his voice more. Again, we've talked about I like screamers, singers, but there were like 4 or 5 songs in this that I was like, just take it up a one notch right here. That would like make this song bump up a little bit. But he kind of keeps it like.
Is there like a specific song that you could point to?
Let me see if I have that in here. Let me see. The song Volunteer, for example, I said he tries to put a lot of his soul into the lyrics here, but he just needs that little bit louder voice, I think, here to kind of pop that out a little bit here on that one. Sometimes he did go up a little bit, like This Ain't It. He did have a little solid, stronger singing on that one. I mean, I'm just talking volume wise and like tone wise.
I mean, honestly, I think that's fair. I mean, he can really go for it if he wants to, but also kind of random side note, he in the past couple months had apparently 2 major dental surgeries and revealed the fact that for most of his life he's had like all kinds of weird abscesses and infections, and like his teeth were so messed up that it was affecting his sinuses. And so he just recently got all that fixed and claims that he is singing better now than he ever has. So maybe moving forward, he will be able to go even louder with the vocals.
Interesting.
Yeah. If you want more, I just have like two more examples of that. Death Wish, which I'm sure is going to get mentioned here tonight. Again, I said really sounds like a classic Neil Young song, but just I want like just more power with the delivery as far as the message. But then his song, is it his or their? How is this? Is this a him?
Joe called this a solo album, so I don't
Well, so
know.
it's kind of it's
I just
Jason
get
Isbell in the
confused.
400 unit. The 400 unit is his band,
Just like
but
Nathaniel Ratcliffe and the
yeah,
Night Sweats.
I mean he's the sole songwriter. So it's really like it's Jason Isbell's, songs and like
It's his band.
voice, but the
Okay.
band is just credited
It's like
because
the E Street Band.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's like Bruce
Yeah.
Springsteen and the Street Band,
All right.
exactly.
Last one I'll say for that note is Middle of the Morning was another one where he did pick it up a little bit, and I liked that part of the song. So what do you got, Dave? Throw a couple of comments out there.
I mean, so I went into this one completely blind. I had never heard him, never heard of him, to be quite honest. And the moment it started and it was country music, I was sad because I really don't like country music.
It's
Um,
Americana.
it's country music. And I was like, all right, I've committed to Joe that I will listen to this. And so I'm going to give this as real of a chance as I can give it. And maybe it'll change my mind about country music,
Oh,
even just a little bit. It did not. But um, I will say that you've given it the context you've given of his life and his recovery does put a better spin on a few things for me. Like when he's talking about, I remember you when the bar was closed, dancing on the table with a bloody nose. I was like, what kind? It's like that. There were things that sounded when I was listening to it like good memories he has. He's like nostalgic about this shit, but now knowing that I had that reversed and that's something like a past that he regrets. At least I'm assuming that's how I'm meant to interpret it. That helps a little, but there's some real country ass shit here that I have a lot of trouble getting. It's like hearing if you were listening to an audiobook of your favorite book, but it's being read by Donald Trump. And like he's doing a really good
Wow,
he's
what?
doing a really like he's doing a good job of reading it, but it's still fucking Donald Trump. And so like your brain just wants to reject it. That's how I feel listening to country music, and that's not your fault, and that's not Jason
Sorry,
Isbell's fault.
I have to revise some notes about Fort Atlantic here. So.
I was like, oh shit, I'm last. This is trouble now. Um let me say some positive stuff. I like all the different varied topics that he's singing about. I thought of the three albums, it has the most variation in terms of topics and themes. I really like a lot of the first thing I wrote when Death Wish started was, oh, Cody's not the only one who picked a dark album. Like there's shit going on in this album. Especially stuff like Volunteer, White Beretta, which I enjoyed quite a bit. That's the song that's about abortion. But it's all coded. Most of it is coded in the twangy country voice. I can't stand. He's got.
That's just his voice, man.
I don't know. I don't know how you take a violin and make it a fiddle just by like playing it differently, but everything's like, yeah, fiddles in the background, and like he's singing about stealing copper pipes and trucks, and he got square-toed boots, so he ain't for real. Wouldn't last 5 minutes on a pedal steel. I'm like, what is this? What was the other one? Oh, yeah, Strawberry Woman was a big offender, and Vestavia Hills, I wrote, I have no clue what the song is about, and it's some twangy ass shit.
I do agree. I actually have a note that Vestavia Hills is the most country song on the album.
I agree.
That's funny because my note for that one says a little more poppy and some soul on this one as well.
I have to defend the lyric about the square-toed boots
Please.
because I just think it's clever. I mean, he's kind of trying to subvert expectations because apparently there is a thing amongst country folk about, if cowboy boots aren't pointy, then they're not real, but it's usually in regards to like riding a horse, like putting your boots through stirrups or something.
Okay.
And so he's putting a twist on it because pedal steel guitar is very difficult to play because there are a number of pedals that you have to be able to hit, and wearing a pointy toed boot makes it easier to do that. So instead of going the like real cowboy shit way, he's going like the music way. And it's like one of the things I love most about him is just like the specificity of a lot of his lyrics. Like that is such a weird, like specific thing that 90% of the people who listen to it aren't even going to get. But I love that he does stuff like that.
You helped contextualize that one, which I appreciate. He does have a lot of lyrics that I like. I thought Middle of the Morning had some good stuff. He says, I'm tired of stepping on your shadow and feeling in the way. Yeah, I'm tired by the middle of the morning. I'm out of shit to say. I was like, oh, that's a thing I feel a lot. I tried to open up my window and let the light come in. I was like, am I listening to Fort Atlantic? What's happening on that one? And I liked Miles. Miles is a really good song. That's the one that I wrote. Like, I would listen to this song again because I enjoyed it. What was the other one? There's a couple like that, but I thought in general, like his lyricism, the poetry in his lyrics were good. I just don't like the genre of music that they're set to, and so I'm naturally inclined to not listen to this music. Save the World, so that's the school shooting song, and I thought it did a good job of like capturing like the terror of a school shooting and how parents feel about like fearing for their children. But I know he's towing the line into like anti-conservative views, but he kind of stops there. And when he's saying something's changing inside my head, I wish he would have picked a side on that one. And he's just kind of playing it in the middle. And I think school shootings are a conservative caused problem. And I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. I just there are times when I felt like, okay, I'm relating to him and what he's saying here, but then wishing, like Cody said, he pushed his voice further. I wish he would push the topics even further and take a stance instead of just kind of exploring a topic in a neutral way. Does that make sense? I don't know.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I get what you're saying. I think he's just trying to like. I think like with Save the World, it's a very personal song, and I think instead of making, and I think he's kind of hinting at the fact that we need to do something about it without. I do wish he maybe said more, but like in the first verse when it's his wife calling him and telling him about the school shooting. He says that. I forget the exact lyrics, but it sounds like she's about to cry, but then he hears her make a choice. And I think that's implying that she's like, instead of giving into the like sadness and just despair that an event like that brings on, kind of getting angry about it and like choosing to start trying to do something about it. But
yeah, but
not really explicit.
I want them to say, that doing something about it is like voting differently or supporting legislature instead of like, or is he saying we're going to do something about it? He's talking about like teaching his daughter how to fight. And I'm like, does that mean like he's giving her a gun, not to bring to school, but just like training her on how to use a gun and like supporting gun rights when gun rights are, in my opinion,
the answer is no.
The problem.
What's
that?
I said the answer is no. I mean,
Okay. Well, I wish
he
that had been
is
made clear by the
staunchly
song.
anti. I mean, he is a true blue Democrat, and maybe not so much in his music, but like he's very vocal about political things on all the social medias, and he pisses off a lot of conservatives because he won't like shut up about it. So
The more you tell me about him, the better this gets for me. So thank you.
okay.
I appreciate having that context because I didn't know. I didn't know. And maybe in that song, if he had given me more context, that'd be good.
I'll jump back
Yeah.
in.
Please do. Please do.
So
I've been for a
I
while.
wanted
I
to
appreciate
highlight,
that.
Joe, some of my high and low songs on the album for you, and also provide some more context to some of those impressions, the wrong word, but also the ones that I said kind of reminded me of some other people. So, if I may, the Mumford and Son songs I was putting on, that is the song "If You Insist," um, right in the middle of the album. A particularly odd song because
I could see that.
there's almost not a chorus to the song. It's basically like sung in the exact same tone and voice as the rest of the song. Um, the hits for me on this album, I'll start there, is I picked three with higher scores here. It was Save the World, which you guys had just mentioned a little bit. Um, and even this one, like his voice was still kind of smooth and the same, but like it seemed to have more inflection and emotion to it, where he was actually kind of struggling with some of the things he was maybe singing about, some of the topics he was talking about. So I appreciated that. That stood out on that one. This Ain't It. I really liked down towards the end of this album as well. Some really fun guitar riffs in that one. I also thought his, again, singing was really strong on that. And I don't have it here in front of me, but I did note that I really liked the outro to that song, however that one ends. And my highest ranked song on the album was also Miles, the final song, which is the one that I said might be actually equal parts of Neil Young and prog rock. And this is where I had the Pink Floyd suggestion on the end of this album here. Looking back over kind of some of the lyrics on this one again, I mean, it seems like again he's talking about some real deep relationship stuff here, and some of these songs seem to be more his familial unit. So I don't know if it's like daughter, father, but other songs on here seem to be more relationshipy, like man, woman type stuff. Particularly the top part of the album seems to be a little more set up that way. But I really liked those three the best, and I will say the two that I gave the lowest score to, which it sounds like I might get beat up here on this, are
Oh no.
Cast Iron Skillet,
Wow.
which just didn't do a lot for me. And I'll be honest,
Wow.
sometimes I do wash my cast iron skillet if my wife says I'm allowed to that night. So there's that.
That's the point of the song, Cody,
Yeah.
is that conventional Southern wisdom says not to, but it's actually okay to wash the cast iron skillet.
Yeah, but my wife has a degree in cooking. She says it's actually not good for it. So
Okay,
I
here's the
don't know.
deal. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
Like
Let's have a
50
whispered
plus years
conversation.
ago, 50 plus years ago, you should not wash the cast iron skillet with soap because dish soap at that time contained lye, which would strip the seasoning off. Modern dish soaps do not contain lye and will not, in fact, harm your cast iron seasoning. It's okay to wash your cast iron skillet, folks.
As long as it is dry relatively quick, I heard.
That part is true.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other song, which was my lowest ranked song on this one, was White Beretta.
What?
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
by a fair margin, actually.
Because Cody's huge twist, Cody's pro-life.
Dun dun dun. What? No, I don't know. I was going back through the lyrics on this one again, just kind of. I will admit that I had a harder time pulling some lyrics out as he was singing than actually being able to read them. And that's, maybe again how I hear lyrics in songs, and maybe like Dave's hinting at like different genres, maybe like filter through differently to my brain. But now seeing the lyrics to the song, I can see there's a little more going on in this scene here that's playing out in the red light in the car. Yep, 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 yep. But yeah, listening to the song, it just didn't do a lot for me there. That's for sure. And one more I want to put out there for you too, Joe, is When We Were Close. If you can think of how that song starts,
Yeah.
that was the one that I said sounded like a country version of an AC/DC riff. It's kind of like something like that. I don't remember exactly how it went, but it had kind of like the stereotypical intro. Yeah. Dave, that could just as easily be a AC/DC song if you let it go.
I don't know if I really see the AC/DC, but
all right, fair enough.
I mean, honestly, that one I could see being like Neil Youngish again.
Maybe I'll have to listen to that one again. Let's see. But I will say, just I don't know if it's a concluding thought, but I will say I could see that if you liked this music, you would like basically this album.
I agree with that.
Which, spoiler, I think could be said for all three of these, but because I did start to think about that song when I was driving and listening to that one song I just mentioned when we were close, because I was like, well, fuck, I love 50 different AC/DC songs, and guess what? They're all the same fucking song. Like, there's no variety there whatsoever. I mean, very little. But if you like that kind of music, you're gonna like the songs that the band puts out, which I can kind of see here as well. If you're into the way this guy has his voice set up, if you're into the way the blend of blues and country and some other Americana tones come through with this, I could see how you'd like most of this album, combined with probably if you listen to this kind of music more often, I bet you probably would naturally soak up some of these lyrics a little more than I'm doing as somebody who doesn't usually listen to this kind of music. So, you want me to put a score on this for me, or you want some more? You got some more yet, Jay?
Now I don't want you to put a score on it.
It's not going to be as bad as you think.
I mean, it's you guys do you, and then I will say my piece.
Well, I'll put my score on this then. So I did the same thing. I took all the songs, I averaged them out, and I had to laugh because if I recall, I wrote down here that you gave Linkin Park a 6.05.
That is correct.
And Joe, for your album, I gave you, by math, a even 6.0.
All right.
So we are pretty close to each other.
I'll just say give some highs and lows. Miles, I said, was my favorite. I liked White Beretta. I liked When We Were Close. I liked Middle of the Morning. King of Oklahoma, I thought had a really good hook in the chorus. I enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah.
Did not enjoy Strawberry Woman. Did not enjoy Cast Iron Skillet. If You Insist was some like nice guy shit that Vestavia Hills I talked about, and This Ain't It. Basically the more country songs.
Apparently, If You Insist is supposed to be from the point of view of a woman, which I'm not sure if I really see, but that's what he says.
Really?
Yeah.
I
don't know if I get it, but that's what he said about it.
I'm looking at it right now and I don't get that at all.
I mean, it's my lowest rated song on the album, so I'm not going to defend it. I'm just saying.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know that you want me to score this one, but I will say again that it's a me problem, not a Jason Isbell problem. It's the twang, it's the country of it that my brain doesn't know how to appreciate, and maybe I will someday, but I don't currently. And I will say that you contextualizing it again has really improved a lot of my perspective. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate being exposed to stuff that I wouldn't otherwise. So
I'm going to chime back in and say I agree with that sentiment, Dave, which is just force is the wrong word, but having the opportunity for a reason to listen to music that I wouldn't normally listen to, I think is a good thing for me. And it's one of the reasons I've tried to tell some of the other hosts to like jump on and try to, listen to some music that they don't know too, just to get different perspectives on there. And I had another really good point, which I just forgot. So if that comes back to me, I'll try to bring that back up.
Ooh.
All right, I'll rate it. I would say it was like a 1 before we talked about this, and now I'm going to listen to it again, and I bet it'll be like a 4.
That actually made me think of my other thing now. So,
which is just below Cody's, really.
Yeah,
but below Cody's super mediocre, boring fucking album.
I just if I'm choosing what I want to listen to, it's not going to be country.
Well, this is a question I had.
It's not country, it's Americana.
I don't know if this is an actual part of tonight's conversation or not, but it's a really interesting one, which is like should you have to know the behind the scenes on music for the music to be good as somebody who doesn't know the band, right? Like I
It's
don't know this,
interesting.
I don't know this guy's story. I don't know the personal connection he has to some of these lyrics and songs. But if somebody listened to my album and you didn't know like all the Chester shit and had
Yeah,
stuff that
that's
maybe
true.
you could relate it to, I could see how you'd be like, this is a pretty standard preppy pop album. So,
I find it interesting the assumptions that I made about this Jason Isbell album and
okay.
how those have been subverted with more explanation and more understanding. So I like that a lot.
All right, Joe, hit us.
What do you got, Joe?
Let me start by saying that One More Light by Linkin Park has a 46 on Metacritic, and Weathervanes by Jason Isbell is an 82. It is
A lot of people have wrong opinions.
Jason Isbell also has twice as many Grammys as Linkin Park ever won and is nominated for 4 more in the upcoming
There's only 2
years.
people in the Americana category. That doesn't count. Just kidding.
Honestly, it's like ultimately people as one of my favorite podcasters often says, people like what they like and they don't like what they don't like, and you can't really force people to like something they don't like. But like Dave just like talking about country over and over is hurting my soul.
I'm sorry,
Like,
Joe. I'm genuinely sorry. I don't
well, it's
want
just,
that
I
to be the
mean,
case.
I guess to me, it's like, there is music I don't like, but like, I feel like, I don't know if there's really a genre of music that I can blanketly say I don't like that to the extent where like if a song in that genre starts playing, I'm just gonna immediately have an adverse reaction to it. And I mean, I get that I'm not you and you're not me, but uh,
I it's in back in the 90s, like I listened to some Shania, I listened to some Garth Brooks. It's the way that this country has divided over the last 20
yeah,
years, and country music specifically is like anthems of the South and anthems of conservatives,
yeah,
and
and I get
they're
that.
and so I just reject it. I
Yeah.
just reject the genre.
I mean, I get that. Like, I don't like modern country. Like because it is that. And
Yeah.
and so much of it is putting on like that fake twang and like country voice, beau beau beau.
Try that in a small town like that.
But
That's
like,
some
yeah,
shit.
exactly. Oh, Jason Isbell had a lot to say about that song too.
I believe it, and I'm glad.
But like I mean, what I love about Jason Isbell is like that's just how he sounds. There actually he tells a story about the set of Killers of the Flower Moon that the first couple of days he was on set, anytime he was around Robert De Niro, he would like shoot him these dirty looks, and like he didn't know what he did to piss De Niro off. Like, he's just trying to be a nice guy, whatever. And he finally found out that De Niro thought that Jason Isbell was trying to be like a method actor. Like
Oh,
he thought he was just trying to be in character as the Southern guy the whole time, and didn't realize that that's just how he talks. Like that's just who he is as a person. So I feel like
that's
there's a
pretty
very
funny.
resistance to him. I mean, I will say my relationship with Jason Isbell is weirdly both pretty short and also much longer than I realized. Um, I mentioned before that he kind of got his start as lead guitarist for a band called Drive By Truckers. And when I was in college, I had a friend who was into that band and kind of made me listen to some of their music. And I liked it, but never got super into it. But there was one song that they released called Goddamn Lonely Love, which I always really liked. Like to the point where like I could play that song on guitar. Like that song has stuck with me. I think that album came out in 2005, so like almost 20 years now. And I didn't know until like 3 years ago that Jason Isbell wrote and sang the lead vocals on that song.
Hmm.
So it's like that song that he performed has kind of been in my life for this whole time. But I kind of just earnestly became a fan of his actually 2 years ago. 2022 was my wife and I, this is going to probably make Dave's skin crawl, but we went to a music festival here in Grand Rapids, which was touring called the Outlaw Music Festival. And the organizer and headliner for that is Willie Nelson, who I have been a lifelong fan of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of him, Dave, but he's another very liberal country artist.
I have heard of Willie Nelson, and I do know him for that. Yes.
But it was Willie Nelson and Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, which I think Cody, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about the band thing.
Yeah.
And Jason Isbell, who I had kind of heard people that I respect mention, but had never really paid attention to. So leading up to that show, I started listening to his music and I liked a lot of it. One of his songs, which I thought about sending you guys, but now I won't because you're monsters, is the first time I heard this song, I immediately knew it was one of the greatest songs I'd ever heard in my life. It's called...
Please send it to me. Please send it to me.
The best part is the song is called If We Were Vampires, but it's not at all about it's not what you would think based on that title. It made me cry. I literally listened to it 5 times in a row, like after the first time I heard it, because it just hit me so hard.
Wow.
Anyway, then we saw him live and he was fantastic. And after that, I just kind of got obsessed. Like, that seems to be a trend with me where I'll kind of like an artist, but then if I see them live and they put on a great show, it just like impresses me so much that
Sure.
Like Ben Folds is one.
Yeah.
You know, Dave, I know you're a fan. Before I saw Ben Folds live for the first time, I didn't really listen to any of his other music. Like, I literally just knew him as the Brick Guy, and then I went to see him and like walked out an instant fan. And that's kind of what happened with Jason Isbell with me. In addition to being, I think, one of the greatest songwriters working today, he is also a phenomenal guitarist. He was the lead guitarist for the Drive-By Truckers and apparently surprised them with his songwriting because they hired him to be a guitarist. And like 2 days after he joined the band, he gave them this song that ended up being the title track of their next album because it was like such a great song.
Wow.
So he's kind of a prodigy. And like, I know Dave said that like the more I told you, the more you kind of, like this album or liked him. Like for me, he's a person where the more I learn about him, the more I just like him as a person and as an artist. It seems like he is on the right side, by which I mean the left side of all the major topics. He is, I don't know. Have you ever heard of Morgan Wallen? He's a modern country singer, and he kind of is what you were saying you don't like about country.
Okay.
And Jason Isbell wrote a song called Cover Me Up, which Morgan Wallen covered like a couple years ago, and it was a major hit for him. Morgan Wallen also had an incident where he got caught saying some super racist shit and just revealed himself to be a garbage person. But because Jason Isbell wrote that song that Morgan Wallen had the hit with, Jason made a crap load of money off of Morgan Wallen's album that had that song on it and donated all the money he made off that album to the NAACP.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
So
that's
like
very cool.
he does a lot of stuff like that where it's, he did like, was it 2020, I think, where it looked like Georgia was going to go blue for the first time.
Yep.
Like he really kind of pushed for that and said that if Georgia did go blue, he was going to record an album of covers of songs by Georgia songwriters, which he ended up doing. But he is very much for the South kind of reckoning with its own sordid past and trying to be better, which I have to admire. Anyway, as for this album itself, I actually agree with some of the things you guys said. I think there are a couple of songs on here. Like Similarly to Cody, I will say that I ended up giving this an overall rating that was a little bit lower than what I expected because I do think it's a great album. I think there are some just phenomenal songs on it. Kind of ironically, I gave Cast Iron Skillet a 10.
Well,
That song is, I mean, a couple of the songs on here, he likes to write character songs. So a couple of the songs on here, he's like putting himself into character shoes.
Yeah.
Cast Iron Skillet is actually based on two actual events that were tied to him. The first part of the song is based on two brothers that he went to school with who, when they got older, kind of got into crime and killed a man in a bungled robbery. And I think Jason was like more friends with one of them. And like, that's the one that the song's about. Like, he ended up getting a life sentence. And it's kind of pondering, like, how did you go from being this kid that I played baseball with and, grew up with to like ending up there? But I think it's also kind of pondering, like, what the South and the conventional, like, Southern values that are instilled into people end up sort of reaping, you know, because so many people there do still have these troubled lives and kind of like do end up being kind of white trashy stereotypes. And then the second half of that song is based on, I think it was like a second or third cousin he had who met a black man and eventually married him, but her whole family basically disowned her just because of the color of this guy's skin. And I mean, obviously people hear a lot of stories about stuff like that, but like this was in like the late 90s, I think he said. So like that kind of shit is still happening.
yeah.
And so it's kind of like examining, like how, because it talks about her father disowning her. And it's like, how are you so hate filled that like you could just not want anything to do with your daughter because of the color of the skin of this guy that she's dating? But I like that he's talking about stuff like that. But in this song, I feel like it is kind of subtly done. And like it, I know, Cody, you said you wish he would go bigger with his vocals sometimes. I love his vocals on this song because they're quiet, but like there's like an earnestness, like it feels just totally honest. So I don't know. I think that song's phenomenal. But anyway, I ended up giving this an 8.12 based on the averages of all the song ratings. I will say if I were to just sit down and, give a numerical rating to this album as a whole, it would probably be a little bit higher, but I think that's why it's interesting to rate things this way because it feels a little more subjective. I mean, it's obviously still objective, I should say. It is still subjective because you're rating the songs, but
Yeah.
I feel like it is maybe a little bit more honest than if you were to just like say, this is how I feel about this album as a whole. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that.
I appreciate your thorough explanations for the
You guys are monsters.
No, I love you. I genuinely do, and I didn't mean to insult you. I'm
I
sorry.
gave you 0.05 lower than you gave mine. Stop crying about that part of it. Come on. There was some good stuff in there. I just want more.
All right, this next album is a 1 out of 10. I mean, what?
This is why I didn't want to do this episode.
You son of a bitch.
Oh, all right. What's our last album tonight, Dave?
Yeah, who is this band? What is this band? Is this a band?
Third album is called Shadow Shaker Volume 1, and it's by a band called Fort Atlantic. They are like a Pacific Northwest rock indie band, I guess. I don't know what their genre would be exactly, but it's somewhere in there. They are basically a duo, but also a one-man show. So John Black is the founder. He's the front man. He's the primary songwriter for the band. This album was created in 2015, they had some moderate fame leading up to that. They were featured in episodes of How I Met Your Mother and Californication, and but then
I watched both of those shows and still have never heard of this band, so I think you're lying.
I was surprised. I saw the Californication thing also, and I was like, oh, I wonder where that was at.
They completed this album right before their label dropped them and did not release the album. And then some shit happened where like John Black's wife went into emergency labor, and then they had their baby in the NICU for 2 months, and it's a whole thing. But they described them they eventually kind of self-released the album in 2017. It has turned out to be their last major release.
We never got Volume 2.
A couple singles since then. I really, really would love to get Volume 2 someday, but I worry that they kind of curse themselves with that or jinx themselves. The band describes themselves as a musical snuggie during the dark night of the soul, which I like. I have some more to say about the band and this album, but let's go to you guys and give me some impressions. And Joe, feel free to just shit all over it in retribution. I deserve it. Go ahead.
Wow. I'm going to start with my biggest complaint about this band. Yes. Not even the album, but the band. How do you call yourself Forte Atlantic and be based in Portland?
It's true.
I assume they meant Portland, Maine. I double checked. It's Portland, Oregon, on the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, that did not even occur to me, but you're totally right.
There's that criticism, number one. But on the plus side, to get started, Dave, I have to say this is one of the best 47-minute songs I've ever heard. So there's that.
Oh, hilarious.
Hey, there's a lot of variation. There's I'm gonna make it. There's you're gonna make it. There's we're gonna make it.
There's the song "Faithfully" by Journey.
Ooh, okay.
I don't know if I know that one, but you're saying this rips that off.
I'm saying that track 2, "Just Hold On," sounds very similar. At least like the main opening music is very reminiscent of the song "Faithfully."
Oh, I gotta check that out now. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't grab on that one either. I'm going to start my comments again here with some comparisons. Now, this one was harder, I got to say, because I didn't have like a Neil Young that jumped out at me.
You could compare it to a trash can, a toilet. What else?
Oh, no, I didn't put any of those down.
A rotting roadkill carcass on the side of the road.
Still going, okay. Song 1.
Cody Fleming.
I Will Never Give Up on You. You ready for this?
Yeah.
This song is a deep cut. You ready for this? This song is The Outfield Meet You Too. Yeah, look that up and try to process it later and see what you come up with.
I can see it.
That's that. Song 2 that Joe was just referencing. I put Philip Phillips on this one, actually, a more modern artist on that one. Song 3.
I love that you just used the word artist to describe Philip Phillips.
Oh, I use that very loosely. That guy could go retire. That's a nice way to put that. Song 3, I said at this point it's driving me nuts trying to figure out who this band is, but at this point I'm going with Don Henley now for song 3.
I could see that.
Eagles
fame,
that one has Henley.
That one has like an 80s vibe to it. It's got a lot of synths.
Yes,
so I could totally...
there's a lot of synth on this album, which I did not expect. So there's that. But it took me till song 4 to finally nail who this is, and it's going to be the band, the Boxer Rebellion.
I'm not familiar with them, so I'm going to have to check that out now. Thank you.
Made famous in that one terrible romance movie with Justin Long and Drew Barrymore, which I can't think the name of. Movie Geek? Cinemaster? Somebody? Going the distance or something like that?
Oh, I have no idea.
No, I don't know.
The plot
Drew Barrymore rom-coms are one of my few movie-related weak points.
Well, spoiler alert for this movie, which, P.S., I actually did get all of that correct, holy cow, and also Charlie Day and Christina Applegate and Ron Livingston and Jason Sudeikis. But anyway, plot of the movie is that Justin Long is a nobody who eventually quits his job to do what he always wanted to do as his dream, which is what she encouraged him to do. And his dream was to become the manager of the band, the Boxer Rebellion. And so they're featured heavily in the movie as as the band in the movie. So, which is a
Okay.
real band. I didn't even know that they were a real band until the movie. But check them out. You may like them as
Yeah, I'm gonna
well.
do that.
It's not quite the same, but it's the closest I could come up with. So there's what I got. I gave up trying to compare after that. So, let's see here. Well, it's interesting that I think you said they were featured in a couple TV shows because one of the first comments I wrote down on this is a very movie soundtracky style of music.
Hmm.
And I did make the joke, but it's not really that far off of a joke when I said it did kind of sound like one song basically through the whole album.
It did, like the tracks literally flow together.
They
Like
bleed into each other, which
yeah.
I am actually a fan of when listening to albums.
Yeah, me too.
Severely despise when they then produce some of those songs into singles, but in general, it's good. What else did I have on this one here?
Hot vomit.
Wow. One thing this one had that I did enjoy, Dave, is I think I forget if the number's 3 or 4, but they have 3 or 4 songs on the album that are notably longer than the others. And in general, I like longer songs more than shorter songs, I have noticed. So I don't know if it like lets me get into it more. Now, some songs feel super long, even if they're short, because they're not enjoyable. But there was someone here that just kind of really got into the jam session, like song 3, Face the Night. Had a kind of a unique tone to it. I said it sounded like he was singing in a like really echoey big room with the way his voice kind of reverberates in the song, which was kind of different, very distant. And the longer it went, that one I thought got a little bit better as well.
Or they just put an echo effect on his voice, you know.
No, I actually saw the room they rented this in. Song 4, Shadow Shaker, presumably the volume 1. That I really liked that song. That was actually the one I gave the best score to as well. And
If I can just interject for a quick
I wish
second,
they would have taken their music up just a little bit in that one though. Like that could have been even higher.
I just want to
for
say
me.
on that song that one of my notes does say that it is more folky than the other songs, almost country or Americana. Fuck you, Dave.
I agree that there's a little bit of that in this. I agree.
So you hate this song, is what you're saying. You might as well hate this whole album because there's like a little note of country vibe in there.
Boy.
There is. He's like, put it all out on the line. Yeah, there's a little bit.
I walk the line. What else we got here? I Still Run, like that song. Actually bumped that one up twice overall for score as I kept going on that one. Now, one I oddly didn't enjoy as much on this one, but I don't know what you two had for reactions on this one, but Bathed in Sunlight was not one I loved more on this one. I don't know
if that's my least favorite of the album.
Okay.
That is one of my top rated songs on this album.
You would be.
I like it because it is so different from the rest of the album.
Yeah.
And I said that it feels like a requiem for oneself and like a modern spiritual.
Yeah, I like the topic that is being sung about, and it does differentiate itself from the rest of the album, but it's 3 verses. It's like with some instrumentals in between. It's not as musically interesting to me. I feel like, I don't know. It is very poetic though. I like that.
Yeah, it's very different. Gospel-y and some more late 90s synth pop I wrote down on that one. That's funny, I actually wrote. I would not be surprised if someone else liked this song more, so
It's me. I'm someone
I guess
else.
that's you right there. Back to You, another one that's kind of a longer song, just kind of jamming out again.
I thought we said we weren't going track by track.
Cody decided he is for this one.
I'm not. I'm just going through
You're going track by track in order.
You
got 2 more to go. Just finish it up.
Yeah, just give us the list. All right, Passing Time. What'd you think?
I have no comments on Passing Time, but when I got to Passing Time, I did note that I enjoyed the introduction of the tambourine all of a sudden. That was a nice little intro to that song. So, and then last song again, I thought was a nice ending to the album, really long lead in, but if I recall, it's actually not a very long song. So it's
Yeah,
like
it
boom,
is.
boom. I enjoy. There's no time left in the middle to do anything with, and unfortunately, it actually got a lower score because of that. Even though I liked two elements about the song, but anyway. Joe, what else do you got?
All right, so I've never seen the movie The Human Centipede, but I mean, my understanding is that it's like a line of people and like the second person's mouth is sewn to the butthole of the first person
Mm-hmm.
and kind of so on and so forth. So like the only way that they can be fed is like the first person is fed something and
Hmm.
then everyone down the line is just like eating the person in front of their shit. Um
Is this because I brought up Donald Trump when I was talking about
so
yours?
well no,
It's
it's
got to
it's
be, right?
because
I think he's
like
saying Linkin Park was the mouth. Is that what he's saying?
well what I'm saying is that like if you could make music like if this album is the musical version of what the shit of the last person in that row
Mm.
would taste like if you had to eat it. Like it's like someone ate music and then shit it out, but like then another person ate that shit and then it just continued and it's just shit upon shit upon shit.
Joe, I really, really appreciate the way you're making me feel a lot less bad. So I genuinely appreciate that. Thank you,
You're
buddy.
welcome. No, I actually really like this album.
That's excellent.
I did. Um, honestly, I mean, I liked Jerry from the start. As soon as the first track, "I'll Never Give Up on You" started, I was like, oh, like I dig what they're doing. Um, I like the kind of like electric drum and bass sound on that song. And then there's some like jangly guitars that kick in the second verse. I think it's a great album opener, and it kind of establishes a vibe that carries through for the rest of the album. Um, I I do think the second song, "Listen to Faithfully" by Journey, and this
Okay,
song back to back, there's
absolutely.
I swear there's something there. But I mean, I like the synth work I like the synth work throughout the album.
Yeah.
I A few of these songs, and this is why I agreed with you, Cody, when you said that on that first one, you said it was U2 and who?
You two in the
The
outfield.
U2
outfield?
in the outfield. The U2 thing to me, U2 is one of my favorite bands, which I don't want to talk about right now because I'm sure we have different feelings. But one thing they do super well is building a song where like it'll start out fairly like stripped down and just kind of add more instrumentation and
Mm-hmm.
more layers and layers until it just feels like huge and anthemic. And I kind of got that vibe, especially from the first song, but a couple other times throughout this album.
Hmm.
I will say trying to rate each track was a little tricky to me on this album, just because I do have to agree with Cody that a lot of it does sound pretty samey.
I think that's fair criticism for sure.
Um, and I actually rated a couple like one of my notes is on track 5, I like it, but by this point, I feel like I kind of get it. And then I actually gave 6, Bathed in Sunlight, which we talked about, a higher score. But then on track 7, back to feeling a bit redundant, not bad, just more of the same. Um, so that's where it gets kind of weird rating each track individually, because I feel like this album is a vibe, as the kids say. And like I would really have no complaints if I were just like looking at this as a whole. And if I was like on a hike somewhere, like on a fall or winter day, and had this on my headphones and was just kind of like zoning out in nature and vibing, maybe have a little herbal assistance along the way, I think it would be an amazing time. Like it would be fantastic. But looking at it track by track, I do have some concerns. I guess the other thing is, and kind of, I mentioned when I was talking about Jason Isbell that one of the things I love about him is that a lot of his lyrics are just like so specific. And I don't feel like that's really true of this album. A lot of it just feels kind of generalized, I'll never give up on you, like just keep going kind of stuff. And it's great, like those are, good messages, but it feels a little generic to me lyrically.
I completely agree with that criticism.
But overall, musically, I did really love it. I was kind of shocked that I'd never heard of this artist before. And I ended up giving it a 7.44 on average.
Nice.
Oh, 7.44. Yeah, I have to. I mean, I was making a joke, obviously, for the sake of making a joke, but also not about the 47-minute song because I think I had posted in our group chat that I had rated all the songs except I had missed one of Dave's, and turns out like I hadn't missed it. There were just a lot of these where I didn't know that one song had ended and the next song had started. So I had to like constantly check what song it was on because
That's
they
funny.
bleed, and then there's some, they sound somewhat similar a little bit here and there. And I do also agree with Joe. Like I'm looking at the numbers, which I didn't really look at before, but like Dave's songs on this album, Shadow Shaker Volume 1, has by far like the smallest increments between my highest score and my lowest score. And then Joe and I are both of our albums, I have highs and lows to them based on the song itself. But I would kind of agree with this one that I enjoyed the whole album, I will say. I think like a situation like Joe just said is a fantastic use. I think if a song that this came on my Spotify, I don't think I would skip it. I enjoyed all of this. I don't know that I would go out of my way to listen to it, but I did say like another comment I had on passing time is I literally put here, I would listen to this music. I think it'd have to grow on me a little bit more. I think that's true of almost all music though.
Yeah.
Very, very few things I hear once and I'm like, that's the shit right there. But I could get into this. I'll do my rating, but then I have a question if you could address also when you do your part, I'd be curious about.
Okay.
It's a personal one, so I know you'll have an answer for it, but also their Facebook profile page says they have the spirit and character of Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen. They should probably update that with more accurate analysis. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't hear that at all.
Maybe that's there, go for it. Anyway, I gave this grand cume here of an average of 6.89 overall, Dave.
Okay.
And my question for you is, I also had not heard of this band. And looking at their albums, it's a pretty small list that they have. And I went on their Spotify page and I was curious. Is there an album actually called Fort Atlantic?
Yeah, that's their self-titled
I noticed that one had like millions more views than this one does, or millions more listens than this one does. So I don't know if those are the ones that were featured in those TV shows, or my question for you is why did you pick this one versus that one if you enjoy more, et cetera? If you could address that in there.
Yeah, it's a good question. Let me look. I wanna check out that other album for a sec. I think there's one song that was that it's the one that was featured on How I Met Your Mother. Let Your Heart Hold Fast has 29 million listens, and the next one on the album has like just over 1 million, and then it really drops off from there. So that's the reason. That was like their hit song from that album that kind of broke out a little bit.
Okay.
The reason that I chose this album is because I prefer it. So I use Spotify's Discover Weekly feature where it just creates a playlist for you every week of what you'd like to listen to, what you haven't listened to, and it thinks you might like. And I Will Never Give Up on You came up one week, and I just immediately loved it. It was my gateway song to the album, and then I listened to the rest of the album and I loved it too. And I think you guys are, I really agree that it is a lot like one long song with a few exceptions, but it's a song that I really like, so I don't mind it for that reason. And when when we were tasked with choosing an album, there's so many songs that I love on albums that I don't. So consistency was one of the things I was going for. I will admit I also kind of enjoy, like, in a hipster way, like, oh, I'll pick someone no one's ever heard of, like being a little bit of a douche like that. But one of the other reasons I picked it, well, so this came out in 2017. I didn't discover it until years later in like the middle of COVID, and needed a big dose of you can get through this shit, which is what the whole album is for the most part. And so I just kept returning to it. And there's so much of it that just really, really pulls at the heartstrings for me. I also have a small connection to the guy John Black, who's the front of the band. He released a video on YouTube a couple years ago where he was starting a thing called Haymaker, where he said he was basically feeling like he was in like a tough spot as a creative, just like the equivalent of writer's block, and kind of doubting himself. And he wanted to kind of put together something with the fans where he would send you some buttons and pins that are a boxing glove, basically. And if you see in my background right here, this little red spot on the bookshelf above me is a Haymaker sticker that I keep there, because the idea is that he's like, when you feel like nobody else is in your corner, I'm in your corner. And everyone who goes in this with me, like, now you're in my corner. And I just thought that was a really nice way to connect with fans. And I really enjoy that. I've put that sticker up the moment I got it, and I've been enjoying its presence there in all the years since. So that was another reason why I love him. I love this album, and wanted to share it. That's it.
I found it very hard. This is not me going in a new direction, trying to go off what you just said here, but I found it very hard to choose an album where I wanted you guys to listen to the whole album also. Like, there's a lot of albums I love a lot of songs on, but not the entire album on. And I kind of thought what you thought, Dave. Like, I mean, I went with a very commercially well-known band for my pick, ultimately, partially because Joe had to listen to it, but also partially because there was like a lot of, indie or underground ones that I know you guys wouldn't have probably heard, but I was like, I don't know if the whole album is as worth listening to for this particular one. So, yes, but I think if we have this as any sort of a recurring segment on here, it could be really interesting to see what we, kind of continue to get down into with some different styles and artists and things of that nature. So, yeah. All right.
I would do this
I'm
again.
Never doing this again.
I hope we do this again.
Dave ruined it.
Joe!
I just keep thinking, I don't know what shirt Dave has on, but I keep thinking he has like waffles on his boobs.
We went to Disney on Ice, so it's a Mickey
Mouse
thing.
Okay. I figured it had to be Mickey Mouse ears.
Mickey's ears, but just out of frame. Make it look like I'm wearing like a mermaid bra or something. Yeah,
I love it. Public domain, just make your own. There we go. Okay.
I almost wore a special Jason Isbell shirt, but you guys don't deserve it.
You didn't know that till we started.
It's true.
Oh, goodness.
Try to find it. I have this shirt it's Jason Isbell party music, and it's got a picture of a bunch of people at like a backyard cookout, and they're all crying because he knows that all his songs are sad. Dave, did you give this one a numerical rating, or are you not? Are you abstaining from that?
Oh yeah.
My own album?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's as an album, if there's so many songs that I would rate above these songs, but they're on inconsistent albums. So it's tough because albums that I like every song on from start to finish are like there might be a dozen of them. And this is one of them. So for that reason, I guess I would rate it very highly.
What about the country-ish one?
It's not just one. I'll tell you this, Joe. I never heard it in his voice until I listened to Jason Isbell and then directly listened to this album. And I was like,
so now it's ruined for you.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Because he's not singing Strawberry Woman. And
he's not singing like that. I'm just saying.
So it's a weird thing, Cody, because as an album, I would put it at like 9.5, but any given song on like the highest song would be a 9.5, and then I don't know. A 9.5 is what I give this album for myself.
All right. Well, Dave's album definitely wins the night with the highest song rating.
How many Grammys has Ford Atlantic won?
They don't even know what side of the fucking continent they live on.
One of the pages I read about it was like the music video for this song was submitted for this award, and I'm like, submitted for nomination, and I'm like, that's not something to brag about that you submitted it. Like, that's nothing. So
I did like this album. I just wish I could still like Dave.
And I wish that I could like country music, and if I did like country or Americana music, I would enjoy the album that you shared. And I'll tell you right now that you've contextualized it, I'm going to listen to it again. I'm going to try to use it. I honestly pledge this as a stepping stone into a genre that I wouldn't otherwise enjoy. And I'm also going to listen to that. It was If We Were Vampires. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
I have it queued up.
Greatly looking forward to trying that one out, because if that was the one that got you in, that hooked you, that moved you, that's the one I'm most interested in. So I'm really looking forward to listening to that.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, Joe.
I appreciate you, Dave. I'm just giving you shit. Would you recommend like the other Fort Atlantic albums?
I mean, listen to it. I don't think it's as good
are
as
they all
Chester
like
Shaker.
a similar kind of sound, or?
Yeah, similar. I think it's really just, in terms of albums, it's just the two. It's Fort Atlantic and Chester Shaker Volume 1, and then the other three that are on Spotify are just singles.
Gotcha.
So you only have to listen to one more to get the whole discography.
Yeah.
I'll do it. I will do it.
You're going to do it. You're going to do it. All right. Anything else today from anybody? We all good? Wrapping up Album Exchange 1. That went places. As kind of figured it would, but it went places. So there's that. All right. Well, this has been another wonderful episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. We're going to finish tonight by asking Joe.
Why me?
I don't know, because I got slammed with like 4 of these recently. So,
Ooh.
Joe, would you do another one of these album exchanges with us if I choose another Linkin Park album?
I'm not going to commit to that on the air.
It only took you like a year and a half to pay this one off, so I think you're...
That's true. See, here's the tricky thing is like I would, but like part of me would want to choose another Jason Isbell album, but now I know that would not be a good idea.
No, I think it would be a good idea. But Joe, what's your least favorite genre of music? Because I'll pick my favorite album in that genre of music.
There you go.
And then we'll be...
It's Linkin Park's first album.
I mean, honestly, like modern country would probably be my least favorite if we can say that's its own genre.
How about opera?
I like opera.
Which of you is
just saying you didn't like musicals?
I don't love jazz.
Jazz is my other one that I don't care for.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm
going to pick a female singer next time.
I have a kind of complicated feelings about rap, I guess, just because, I mean, I haven't listened to a ton of it. Ooh. I like some rap, but I tend to like stuff that's more kind of like produced and melodic, I guess.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Anyway,
let's get out of here. All right, everybody. One more time here. Friends occasionally not disagreeing. This has been Elm Exchange number 1. I'm Cody. That's Dave. That's Joe. And I think we're good. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
We'll see you soon.
thank you. Bye-bye.